Hello, everyone. The following is an interview with Kathy Cassidy, a primary school teacher who has been using educational technology with her students for over 20 years.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you today?
I'm pretty good.
Yeah, is that your office?
Well, it's my temporary office because my intern is doing a block right now, and so I'm supposed to um, stay out except for one period a day, and so I sort of cabbaged this little room as my own for this 3 week time period.
Nice. So you don't have to like watch them teach and assess them and stuff, or?
Well, she's here. The program that we have is really excellent because she starts the year with me and she starts just teaching one thing at that point, and then she gradually adds subjects until she does a block of 3 weeks with with her doing everything.
Mm,
And she sets targets for herself and I monitor those targets for her at this point. She's excellent, and so I have no qualms about that. If there was issues, I would do other things, but there's
he'd probably still be in the room.
well, you're not really supposed to do that, but I do know one teacher who spent the entire time sitting outside the classroom door so that she knew what was happening. But,
That's intimidating.
well, I don't think that the person had no idea she was doing that.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but fortunately, that hasn't been necessary.
Well, it's good to hear that you have a good student. That's important. It makes
Yeah.
things a little easier to do.
Oh my, yes.
So,
So tell me a little bit about this. How did you're teaching this ECE class, and who found me? You or your students?
well, so the first thing I wanted to let you know is I will apologize. I have two monitors, and so you're actually over here, but my camera's over here. So when I'm looking over here, I'm actually looking at you. When I'm looking over here, I'm not looking at you. So if it's like, why didn't Sean look at me the entire interview? It's not, I'm looking at you, but you're over here. So okay. Um, so yeah, so actually, it's a leadership in technology course in the degree program that we have. So it's a 4-year degree program, and the students are in their third year in their first semester. And a part of the course is for them to get connected to the educational technology world. So I have them do portfolios, and one of the first portfolio entries I asked them to write about is for them to find an educational blog. And it didn't necessarily have to be about technology, but just a blog of an educator that's doing some things in education, and it can be about technology if they want, but doesn't have to be. And two of my students actually, because of that assignment, they found you. And so we have an Edmodo community, and one of the students posted a message on the Edmodo community that was about you and saying, I found this blog, it's amazing. Originally I thought this assignment was going to suck, but this is so wonderful. And she was really happy and impressed with what you were saying and what you were doing. And because I think, one of the things is a lot of the students don't think about technology in early learning environments. They think of technology in like later environments. So we had some really interesting discussions at the beginning of the course about, okay, what is technology? How can it be used in early learning environments? That kind of stuff. So she was really happy with what she read. So when I saw your name, I was like, oh snap, I know that person. And so I asked them. I said, if I would be able to connect with Kathy and set up an interview, would you guys be interested? And within like an hour, I had like 15 people saying yes, absolutely, yes, yes, yes. So that's where it kind of came from.
So let's just clarify: did they find my classroom blog or my professional blog?
I'm pretty sure they found your professional blog.
Okay.
Yeah, I can actually check. I can send you the message that she posted.
'Cause there's not a whole lot. There hasn't been a whole lot happening on that professional blog for very various reasons this fall.
Okay, well I'll let her know. you're
Classroom
you're
blog gets at least 2 entries a week.
Yeah, that blogs, they're all public facing, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yep, on all the kids' blog public.
Here we go. So this is the message that she sent. It's a nice message, and the blog she references is It's actually a specific entry.
Oh yeah, that is.
Yeah. So is that your classroom? That's your classroom or your...
That's my professional.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe I'll encourage a student to like send you a message and then you can say, hey, check out this blog as well. And I showed your...
I often link to my, because I talk about what I do, right? So I often link to my classroom blog. So I would be surprised if they hadn't found that if they'd found my professional blog. So
Yeah, and I showed it in class as well, just to like show them who you were and you know who we were going to be interviewing, because some of them weren't familiar with you. So, so yeah, you got an audience of 40 some odd students. Which is nice.
wow, finally somebody's looking.
Well, I think you've had lots of people looking.
Yes, I have.
I saw your last, I don't know if it was last or the most recent thing, but you're having an interesting conversation with people about putting children's faces and photos on the internet, and
That was interesting. And it led to somebody posted something the other day about how I responded to a parent comment, and I thought, how have people not got this by now? This was not a parent. This was a random stranger.
yeah. Well, it's all contextual, right? When you have all this information and somebody takes it out of context, I guess it can be challenging.
Anyway, well, and you know what? If you post, you got to be willing to defend what you do, right?
And that's one of the big things that I keep telling students is that, you know, when they're creating a portfolio, it's not an assignment for me, because they ask me, what do you want me to write about, or how should I write? What do you want in terms of this? And I say, no, it's not me. You have a public that you're writing to, so it's everything that I'm providing you is more suggestions on how you write to the public, not how you write to Sean.
Or how you write for yourself is what many people think too, right? They're really blogging to help themselves think through what their stance on things. And
Yeah, for sure.
if you aren't pleasing yourself, if you write to please everybody, it's not going to work.
Yeah, definitely not pleasing, but they at least need to be aware that there's other people are going to read their blogs.
Mm-hmm.
I had that happen last year where a student actually had somebody comment on their blog, and they came into the class and they were all like, there was a mixture of excitement and fear, and they were like, somebody commented on my blog, I can't believe it. Oh my God, people are actually reading my blog. So it's like, yeah, that's why we do it that way. But I do want to thank you for taking the time to meet with me. It's nice to connect, and I was excited, when somebody mentioned you and I had a connection. So I'm hoping that our discussion can be powerful for them, because they have lots of very interesting questions and curiosities, and they're a very good group. They're very critical, very thoughtful,
Okay.
and they've been very engaged. And I've tried to do a couple of new things this year with the course, and they've just really gotten into it. So I like the group overall. So, and they're gonna watch this, so they're gonna see that I just said that. So keep that in mind. You're doing course evaluations, people. So do you want to go through the questions?
Sure, I'm ready.
Now I have a list of a bunch of questions. So I had like 40 questions. Obviously, I tried to go through them and kind of collapse some questions that were similar. They're just open-ended questions, so if we don't get to some of them, it's totally fine. If there's a question I ask that you're like, yeah, don't really feel comfortable answering that, just be like, no, I don't want to answer that. And then we can go from there. So the first question, this wasn't a question they asked, but something that I was thinking might be a good idea. If you can kind of do a little Kathy promo, talk a little bit about yourself, how you became a teacher, what you've been doing. You can give a plug for your other media influences or references.
Okay. So I am Kathy Cassidy, and I teach grade 1 in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. And I've been a grade 1 teacher for a long time. I became a teacher because my dad told me that I'd be a good one and I should do that. I didn't know what else to do, but really was, he did know that was a good fit for me, and it has been a good fit for me. I'm pretty passionate about literacy, and I've become passionate about connecting my classroom with other classrooms and with other people because of the power I've seen in that. I have a classroom blog on EduBlogs that you can find on Google. I have a professional blog I also blog occasionally for other people who ask me to do that for them. Um, I have written a book, and the book is called Connected from the Start: Global Learning in the Primary Grades. And that is what you can find on, if you, I'm sure you can find it if you Google it. I've never tried, but
You can find it, and it's in our Edmodo community, one of the most recent posts. So
there you go. There you go. And I have had no bad things said about my book. I have 5 stars from 12 ratings, so that's awesome.
that's really good.
Okay, there's my promo.
Now, one follow-up quick question. You said that you've done this a fair often or a fair amount in terms of Skype interviews and connecting with people. So, can you describe that experience? Where do people kind of come from, and what have you been doing?
You mean when I just do these talks by Skype?
Yeah, I'm curious. It's when you become a leader in a certain area and people reach out to you. I'm just wondering about what the nature of that kind of experience has
Okay,
been.
so I do a fair amount of speaking. I counted up actually a couple months ago how many I'd done since the beginning of the year, and it was 30 some. So like some of them are just like this, they're just Skype interviews. Sometimes I go and do a day of PD for people. Sometimes I'm invited to conferences to speak. There's such a variety of things, and really that never occurred to me that I would ever be doing that, and it never occurred to me I'd write a book. These things just sort of happen. And, often professors surprisingly ask me to speak to classes or things like that. So yeah, it's happening more and more. And I'm happy to share what I know. I've been blogging since 2005, so I have a bit of experience in that area.
Just a little bit. So, in terms of the blogging, what made you decide to start blogging, and how have you kind of evolved through your blogging journey?
Well, the answer to this is in the book, but I'm happy to answer.
Read the book, people.
Yeah, no. Well, about, oh, 15 plus years ago, 5 computers were plunked into my classroom, and the school board had gotten a special deal on them, and they said, use these computers. And those were kind of computers that you could not put software on. Software was the thing then, and because the internet was really in very infancy. And so I didn't know how I was going to get kids to sites who were still pre-readers and writers and couldn't really type URLs and were prone to clicking on something that was the wrong thing and getting someplace where they couldn't get back. And so I didn't know how I was going to make those useful. There was a word processing program, and so we were using that to do some writing because I thought that was a bit higher order thinking skill. I wanted, though, to be able to share that in some way. And I was also doing something on my own webpage at that time that was called Our Day. And every day at the end of the day, one of the kids would write about the things that we had done that day. And the parents could look at it in the evening and see what their child had written. But that would disappear every day the next day because somebody else would write on it about what happened the next day. So those two things were happening in my classroom. And I was really looking around for some kind of a template or something for the writing. And then I went to a session that was called 50 Interesting Things That Are on the Internet. And, because people didn't, wow, what's on the internet? What is the internet in those days? And one of the things, it was an hour session and there was 50 things. So you can see not a lot of time for each thing. But one of the things that this presenter mentioned was blog, the word blog. And I was, I thought, I wonder. I thought about it for a week and then I phoned my tech director and said, do you think this would work with 6-year-olds? And he immediately said, yep, I'll come over and help you set it up. And he did, and I never looked back. It has changed my classroom completely. It has opened it up to so many wonderful opportunities, and it has opened it up for people to see, the parents especially. That's why I initially did it for. We get a lot of people from other places now too, but it was initially for the parents, and it has opened our classroom up to the world, really.
So along those lines, and it kind of leads into one of the questions I was going to ask later, but I'll ask it now because it's appropriate. But a lot of people talk about technological competency and how, they make the assumption that children, or in kindergarten or even, pre-kindergarten, because they may not have, a good command of like writing and the language, and they can't use technology because you have to be able to type and you have to be able to read. And so there's no benefit to using technology like computers or tablets in primary grades. How do you respond to that? And did you find
There's
that to be a
still
barrier?
people like that.
There is. That's one of the questions that one of the students asked, and
Okay, so okay, well, um, clearly they can, because I've shown that. So I think when my kids first start writing at the beginning of the year, it's not readable, but they put it online anyway, and I put in brackets after they're writing what they wanted it to say. And as the year goes on, I do that less often because it's more understandable. And so I don't have to do that. But even from the beginning, then they have an audience for their work, and they can get comments on their work, and they can feel like they are a writer in a way that you can't feel like you're a writer if you're writing in a book that only your teacher will see, and perhaps your parents at the end of the year. It's a totally different writing experience. The other thing I want to say is that now, in the early days, it was difficult to do this, but now it's so seamless to put pictures on online. And so even before kids can write, they can draw pictures. They can take pictures of the thing they made out of Lego, or of what they made with the blocks, and they can post that online to share. So really, kids much younger than mine can do that with support from their teacher.
so did you find, just in terms of that process, I'm trying to think of making it transparent. So in those early periods when the children may not be able to write completely, do they like handwrite and then you type it out, or do they actually type on the computer, or like what's that process look like?
I sometimes will have them, at this point now, I sometimes have them take pictures of what they've written with a pencil, but we also write on it was computers in the first, now we have iPads in our classroom, so they're writing on the iPads now.
Okay.
Take
Cool. Now this kind of leads into the interview is just flowing perfectly. So what would be some of the technologies that you have found to be most beneficial in supporting children in their learning?
Well, I use whatever technology I have, and I didn't start out with a lot. I had those 5 computers, and they eventually died, and then I had, for a while, I just had access to, like, we had a teacher computer in the classroom, and we had a computer lab. I won a couple contests and was able to get a couple of netbooks, and which have died also. And you just use whatever you have at the time. And now I won another contest, and I was able to be one-to-one with iPads in my classroom. And that is, of course, the ultimate, because everybody has their personal device, and there's no fighting over who gets to use it when. It's just you use it if it helps your learning, and here are some ways that it can, and here's the ways we can show our learning. Everybody has access to their own device, and can use it whenever it helps their learning. Not, well, sorry, somebody else is having a turn now. So I really do like iPads. I think they're a great device. I'm not familiar with the other tablets, but they're probably great also.
Okay. So the one question, or the one thing you just mentioned, was contests. So one of the questions students were asking were, how do you integrate technology into an environment where funding might be an issue? So can you speak a little bit to what these contests are and how you get technology into your space?
I have just happened to find things that provided. It sort of have been flukes, and because I'm doing stuff that's sort of out there, and my kids are cute, I think that's how come I'm able to win the contest. The one for the iPads was a Best Buy one that is no longer. I think the year after I won, it closed down. So you just have to keep watching for things online, and really, there's no consistent funding in Canada. We don't have the whole system of raising money the same way as they do in the USA, and so I think the important thing, though, is to do whatever you can with whatever you have. I have a friend in Australia who had a kindergarten classroom and had nothing except for her own smartphone. And she used that smartphone and their classroom Twitter account to connect. And they used their voice and they took pictures of the things that they did and they posted those things and were able to connect with the world and in that way. It's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have.
So what would be, this was a question I was going to ask earlier, but we didn't get to it, but so what would be kind of your personal philosophy on the use of technology in an early learning environment? Like, because you've talked a lot about exposing children to a wider audience and that kind of
Yes,
stuff. So.
yes. So audience is certainly there. I think that we should do things with technology that we that first of all that we can do things better with technology. Some things technology does better. For example, I used to have a listening center in classroom. Now my students can listen to books on their iPads, and as they read it, the words are highlighted in front of them. So I think that's something that technology does better now than well, I guess that was a technology when I had my kids listening to reading. Of course, I still read my kids' books, but I can't read every kid the book that they're interested in at that particular time. And so when we do a listen to reading block, they can listen to the stories that they prefer. So that sometimes technology does things better. But really, I like that technology allows us to things we have never done before. We can connect with other people. We aren't learning from the technology. We're really learning from people. And I think that through our comments that my students get, and we actually use those comments as our shared reading. We use the Twitter feed as our shared reading. So the people who are in our network on Twitter and who are commenting are actually part of the instruction in my classroom. They're part of the learning. And then my students can also see what other people are learning about and learn from that. And we can also, through Skype and through Google Hangouts, or we can actually learn, synchronously with other people in other places. For example, we've had several mystery number Skypes this fall, where another classroom will pick a number between 1 and 20 and we'll pick a number, and we ask yes or no questions to see if we can guess the number. And some of the kids are just saying, is it 9? Is it 11? But other kids can say, does it have 2 digits? And so the kids can use the technology to learn with other kids. And, oh, what? You asked that question. That was a good question. We should ask that question next time, because look at all the numbers we got to cross off our boards when he said that. So it's really it really allows you to learn with other people that way. We've also used Skype to do readers theater with other classes. We've used Skype to talk to experts in a particular area when we had questions and the things that we wanted to wonder. People that knew more things than their teacher did about rocks or about medical matters, things like that. So it's just sort of can open up the world.
So I really like that. The one other thing that I'm wondering that is, the students didn't ask this as a question, but it's something that's come up in our discussion, is the level of technological expertise that the educator needs to have or the teacher needs to have in order to successfully implement technology in their early learning environment. So what would you say to an educator who feels, I'm not good at technology, I don't know how to use technology? Is that a barrier? Do they need to have a particular level of technological knowledge, or what have you found?
Well, first of all, what technology seems to vary with what you are familiar with. If you, like at one point, using an overhead projector, turning on a light switch was technology, and people were going, "Ooh, wow, wouldn't it be wonderful if we can get that into the schools and we can use those things?" Technology changes over time, and we have intercoms in our schools, and that was a big innovation, I'm sure, at one time too. So things change, and you don't have to know everything about everything. I certainly don't. I learn from my kids constantly that they figure out things on those iPads that oh, how did you do that? And they show me, and we are learning together. certainly I know more than I did when I started out, but that's not because I was born with all that knowledge. I just learned it along the way. So you don't have to have a lot. You just have to be willing to try. And and that's what I was. That's really, I think it's my pig-headedness that have helped me to learn things, because you know, when things don't work, and they often don't work when you're trying to use technology, things go wrong, just as they do when I use books or when I use pencils. The pencils break. There's frustrations, but I don't stop using the pencils because they broke, or stop using the book because a page is missing or something. We make things work. And so I think that if you have that attitude, that you're going to do it, and you're going to do the best that you can, and if things go wrong, then you'll try something else, and use whatever knowledge that you have, and be willing and open to things that you haven't tried yet.
So it's okay to make mistakes, people. That's perfectly
Oh, yeah.
fine. And
Oh, I've had so many mistakes.
can I ask you another question? This has nothing to do with technology. How many times has a child asked you about your GPA and what marks you got in your undergrad?
None.
Yeah, would you say marks are really important for... Never mind, that's a bad question.
But you know what? We all like to do well. I understand that, because I'm kind of type A.
Yeah, no, I get it. I always, students and I always like have these discussions about grades, and I just say kids don't care about your grades. They want to know that you understand them, and they want to know that you understand learning. That
When
GPA
you're in
doesn't matter.
college, grades are your salary, and so that's what you look to for your verification, right? So,
For sure. So I mean, you've given a lot of really good examples of different things you're doing. Just taking a step back, though, and this is a specific student question. So they asked, what are the first steps that you take towards making a decision to use a specific type of technology? And then once you've made that decision, I know you said you kind of use whatever you have, but once you've made that decision, do you have like a process of how you walk through it? Is it structured, or is it just kind of chaotic, or what do you do?
well, to use a new technology, I'm pretty purposeful and deliberate in using new technologies with my students. Um, the blog I use because I saw a purpose for it. It was going to fill a need that I had in my classroom. I saw that other teachers were using Twitter, and I wasn't at first convinced that that would be a good thing. And then finally I saw, yeah, I can see a way I could use that. And so I decided to use Twitter in my classroom. And it's the same with Skype. There are lots of great tools, lots of teachers are using, like Edmodo and, Padlet, all sorts of great things. And if I see that there's something I want to be able to do that I'm not able to do now, then I would use those technologies. So first, I think you have to be purposeful and think, what do I want to accomplish this? Don't have a blog just for the sake of saying, oh, I have a blog. Use it because you want to communicate with the parents, or you want your students to have a digital portfolio, or you want to be able to connect with others, or whatever it is. Do it because you see a purpose in that. So I think that's the first thing. And then after that, how can I make that work in my classroom? If you just have that once a week trip to the computer lab, how can you make whatever it is that you wanted to make work using that? And you can't be just, let's just try it with grade ones. You have to build that step by step. And every year in the fall, I don't know what it is about grade one teachers, because I'm not the only one who does this. I know I've talked with other teachers. You forget how much the kids have progressed by the end of the year. And you have to learn it again every fall, that, oh yeah, these kids don't know how to do all those things that the kids last June could do. We have to go back and start again, step by step, building that in them, the ability to do that. And yeah, it's, you model, and then we do it together lots. And then after you've done it together lots, then some kids are able to be independent, and you let them fly while you are helping the kids who still need that support. It's a process.
So the step by step would be kind of you said like, modeling and then, cooperative and then independent. So irregardless of whether or not you're talking about blogging or whether you're talking about using the iPad, that's kind of the process that you go through.
Even if I'm talking about how to hold the pencil.
And a pencil is a technology, by the way, people.
Oh,
Just
and not everyone holds it correctly. And so
well,
we have
I
to do
never
that.
did when I was a kid. I was the kid that held it sideways like that with the pencil sticking out the other side.
Yeah.
So given all that, what would you say are the most important things that educators need to be aware of when implementing technology in primary environments?
Well, you first of all have to have thought through the whole safety thing, especially if you're working with young kids. Think that through. So my personal philosophy is that only with the parents' permission do I post stuff, and I think that's a given. We have a media release form that my parents sign, and that allows me to do what I do. But I also have them in the second week of school and explain what we're doing, show them what happened last year. And if you can't do that, show them what somebody's doing that you want to emulate and say, this is what I want to be able to do. And this is the safety things that I have in place. So my personal rules are, yes, you see pictures of the students on my blogs, but you never see a picture of the students on their own blogs. You only see self-portraits, which aren't really contributing to identifying the student. Um, and so on my blog, I also might mention, you see pictures, but you'll never see a kid identified by their picture. I won't publish a name. You do along the side of my blog see all the names of my students because it's connected to their blog. This is on my classroom blog. You see all of um, their their blogs listed, but you have no idea which of those cute kids is Sage or which one is Adam.
Mm-hmm.
And then because you don't see their picture on their page, you don't ever make that connection. If we do a video or a picture or something that includes a face, and get on there. You'll see lots of pictures, videos of their hands as they explain things, or you might see their feet, but you don't ever see their face on their blog. And you don't ever see their last name as well. In fact, if the parents make a comment, I talk to the parents about this, but they forget, and they include their last names in their comments sometimes. And so then we read the comments and are overjoyed to get them and celebrate them, but I never post them. We delete them if they have their last name. And then the kids go home and tell their parents, and they never do that again.
So you moderate the comments then for your blog?
Absolutely, I moderate comments. And in fact, we read them together as they come in from other people. That we read them together. That's our shared reading. And then if it's a good comment, we post it. We rarely have to say that's not a good comment. Only if someone's trying to advertise something. In all, 8.5 years I've had kids blogging. The bad comments have really, besides spam and like I said, advertising things, no one's ever written anything inappropriate. The comments, sometimes I've had some years where there's kids who are fighting and put a nasty comment on another kid's blog, like I hate you or something. And so that evokes, with that child's permission, it evokes a comment, a conversation about, is this appropriate and why not? And will you always feel that way about that child? No, I won't. And probably by the time you read the comment, they don't. And so if you put it out there, it's going to be there forever. And so you use it as a digital literacy lesson, and then we delete it.
Okay, cool. So safety and making sure you're protecting enemy is definitely one of the most important things. Are there other really important things that you think educators need to be aware of?
I think that everybody will find different tools that work for them and that work for their class and for the way that they teach. I think that they should know that there are safe ways to do that, and then just to go for it. I can't think of anything else in particular that I would say, because you have to find your own way.
Yeah, be fearless, take risks, don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
I tell my students a story about my grandma and how I taught her how to do emails, and so she emailed me, and then she called me, and then
Did you email?
That's exactly what she said. She's like, I just sent you an email, and I'm like, yeah, Grandma, I just got it. And she's like, oh dear, that was quick. And I'm like, yeah, it's instant. And she's like, okay, well, I'm done now, and I want to turn off the computer. How do I do that? And this was like, on a PC machine circa 2005. And I said, well, it's easy. You go to start and you go shut down. And she said, why would I go to start when I'm finished? And I was like, that's a really good point. And so I tell my students there's a spectrum. There's people like my grandma, and then there's Bill Gates, and everybody else is in between.
It's another literacy, totally. And what you went through with your grandmother is me with my mother a year and a half ago. She got her first computer and had no idea what a shift key was, or how she'd never done typing of any kind. And it was a very painful process. Me at 2.5 hours away on the phone, trying to imagine what it looked like on her screen, and what is a URL, where do you type that, and trying to figure out what was going on. It was very painful, because it's a totally new literacy, and that she did not have. But to give her credit, she went through that and has become.
And it's one of those things that it also helps you to develop a deeper understanding of where you probably were a long time ago. And even if none of this stuff is natural to us, like we had to learn it at some point. And
exactly,
there's always somebody. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, we ask our students to take huge risks every day. I ask my students to try to read things that they have no idea what that word is, and I ask them to try to use those strategies to figure it out. That's a really big risk, and for some of those kids, that's really tough to try to say in front of somebody what a word might be when it might be wrong. And we're asking the kids to take those risks, and so we need to be willing to take risks ourselves and to model that, and make mistakes in front of the kids and solve problems. What are some things I could do to try to figure out, why is this Skype call not going through? What could I do? And just be willing to say, well, that didn't work, we'll try something else.
I think that's a really powerful piece of advice. What would be like, you talked about a couple of things that you've done, but do you have any like go-to success stories where you feel technology has been really beneficial in supporting children in their development?
Well, most of it is just, there's not a lot of huge aha moments. There's just a series of, yeah, that was good pedagogy. Just the little things on and on. But I'll tell you one story that also happens to be in the book, because I think it's really a good one. We had connected with that kindergarten class in Australia. And one day, my kids came to school. This was a couple of years ago. They came to school in January saying there's flooding in Brisbane. And they were worried about their friends in Australia because they'd heard this from their parents, they heard it on the news, and they were worried about kids in another place because we had that connection with them. And that's pretty powerful, that 6-year-olds who they're so centered on themselves, they're not able to think about outside themselves, but they were worried about their friends in Brisbane. They thought about them in the same way as they thought about the classroom next door to us. And so we contacted, Twitter was the only way we knew to contact them at that point, because they were on summer vacation in Australia in January. And so we sent a tweet to their class, and their teacher, who was on vacation, was able to tweet us back and say, don't worry, yes, all of the gems, which is the name of the class, are safe, and I'm safe, and thank you for your concern. And then by the time we got that tweet, because the time difference, it was the next day that we were reading it, and the kids by that time had found out that there were sharks in the water, and so we were concerned about that. Even though my prairie kids have no concept of sharks, they know that and so we tweeted them back to say, stay out of the water. And she said, yes, we'll stay out of the water. And she also tweeted us a map of the affected area and showed us where they were, that it wasn't in that affected area, and talked about the chemicals that were in the water and how many times larger the chemicals in the water were than was safe. And my kids didn't know that big number, but they knew it was big and that it meant that it was not safe. And so they learned some things through that. And so we watched some videos of what's happening in Australia, and they had a sense of a world event that could not have happened in pre-internet days, in pre-connecting days, because, well, I would have maybe heard their parents talking about in the newspaper, but that would have had no meaning for them at all. But because of that connection, they were able to connect it with some kids that they actually knew, that they had seen and felt an affinity for, and felt they had a relationship with.
So this leads me to one of the other questions, and it might be redundant, but given the powerful story that you just shared, but a lot of my students and a lot of people in general that I've found are really concerned about the impact of technology on social emotional development. So they talk about children need they if they're in front of a screen all the time, or all that kind of stuff, then it's going to mess them up, and we're going to have antisocial children who just focus on looking at computers, like teenagers do. All they do is stare at their cell phones. So how do you respond to that kind of? I mean, given that the nature of the story you just told, how do you respond to people who have concerns about this messing up children's social emotional development?
Well, clearly, I don't think that it is in that instance. That's an example of that. It's not, and I think that it is a societal shift. I don't think there's a whole lot of things we can do about that. Do my kids have screens in front of them in my classroom all the time? No, no. Days go by that those iPads don't even come off the shelf. It just depends what is the best way for the learning at that particular time. I think it's important that we do teach kids how to learn use social media. It's not going to go away. It's the internet is not going away. It's here to stay. So and I think society is changing, and I don't know, do I know what it's going to become? Absolutely not. So I just think the social shift is changing in the ways that we interact. I think it's still important to interact one-on-one, but I think that this is a different kind of interaction, and that we're going to have to figure out as a society some way to have the two side by side, which they are right now, and that they can both exist, and both are a kind of social interaction, and an important kind, clearly.
Now, so just to challenge a little bit on that as well. Let's just say you're on a stage with Sherry Turkle. Are you familiar with Sherry Turkle and her work?
No.
Sherry Turkle. So she wrote the book Connected and Alone, and she did a TED Talk called Alone Together. So it might not be fair to challenge you if you're not familiar with her work. But it's along those lines, because she takes the perspective that we expect too much from technology, and not enough from each other, and the interpersonal nature of our interactions. And she has a really very interesting kind of vignette that she talks about how, 10 years ago, if you were to visit a school, and the school finishes and all the kids run out, maybe more than 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, the first thing that the child would see when they open that door is their parent standing there, make eye contact, they'd run to the parent, and they're being embraced, and whatever, and, okay, get in the car, I'm going home now, or they start walking home, and then they'd be talking to each other. But what she's observed now is, a kid opens the door and they see the parent, but the first thing they see is the top of the parent's head, because the parent's looking at their phone. And then the communication is interrupted communication, where it's like, I look at you for a quick second, then I look at my phone, then I look at you. And so her message is, what's the impact that's having on children? And then we do that when they're very young, and then when they become teenagers, they're antisocial. And really, I don't know any teenager that's really social with adults, because they don't want to be. But so what would you say to that, in terms of, like, as educators?
Well, she has a very valid point. I think that it's true that as parents, as teachers, we need to be connected with the kids. We need to make sure that we have that connection with them. I think that's a very important thing. On the other hand, there are social interactions that can happen online, and do happen online. And so, as I said, as a society, we need to figure out that balance, and we need to make sure that we are in the moment, as well as being connected with others. And do I know the answer to that? Absolutely not. But I agree that we need to be. I don't disagree with what she's saying. To say that we're not going to be interacting online, you've lost that battle. That was lost many years ago, and so that's not going to happen. So how can we as a society make sure that parents are interacting with their kids, make sure that teachers are, and that the people, that when you're in a room with people, that you are interacting with them? Because I do think that is important too.
So
I think they're both important.
Yeah, and I mean, I appreciate. I'm sure that you've probably said the same thing on numerous occasions, and I think my students, it's really good for them to hear somebody who uses technology on a regular basis emphasizing that no, There's not like you come into my class and the kids are just sitting in front of iPads for the whole time they're in the class. It's not what it is. Balance is what's most important. Um, can you speak a little bit to, have you experienced any resistance from parents and families regarding you using technology in your classroom? And if so, how do you respond to that?
I very rarely do. I can think of about 3 years ago, I had a parent who, she was really young too. Was probably 22. And I know that's not young to your students, but it's young to have a 6-year-old. And so, um, and she at the parent night was very vehement and said, "Wow, the kids are online." Like, she was so surprised, even though she'd signed the forms. She was so surprised at what was happening. And there's bad people online. And I explained, yeah, there are, but there's also good people. And here is the steps that I take. She was not convinced, but another parent was at that meeting who had had a child in my classroom before, and she talked about the experience of having her child in my class 2 years before that, and what it had been like, and how she was able to, what good came from the kids being online. And I went to talk to the mom afterwards, and she said, "Yeah, I heard what the other parents said, and it's okay now." So it didn't matter what I had said. It was because another parent had reassured her that yes, this is a good thing, and it can be a very safe thing for her. So that was a pushback experience. Um, but very rarely have I had something like that. I can think of another parent who in the early years thought we shouldn't be using computers, but I think really she was angry with me about other things. I don't think that she was angry about I think that was just what she was saying, that because she was angry about something else that involved her child that she felt was, anyway, that's all.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Key point, people. Sometimes parents aren't going to like what you do, and that's okay.
Right. So if a parent didn't want their child to their face to be out there, I don't have to put their face out there. I won't put your child on the blog. If they want their child's name not to be out there, I will use a pseudonym. The blog is what we do in my classroom, and I'm not going to stop doing that. But there are ways that your child can participate that will help your child in other ways, right? That your child can still be part of it, but their identity is protected. And so if that's what you want, then that's fine. But really, once I have explained to parents, this is what I want to do, and this is how I protect the kids. This will be my 10th class then? I don't know. The kids that I first started with, they're here. So in all that time, no parent has ever said, by the end of the year, no, they were on board, they wanted it.
Yeah, that's wonderful
Yeah.
to hear. And it sounds like most of the parents' concerns are safety related. It's not.
Absolutely.
Do you have a lot of parents coming in saying, besides that one parent, coming in, the children they should be outside playing and, engaging with, real life objects. Do you ever get that approach from a parent, or?
I haven't, because the kids do. The kids do. Like, they go home, and some of the parents at first think that they are only on their computers because that's what the kids talk about. That's what they're excited about. And then the parents have come and seen all the writing that they have in their book and stuff, like, okay. So they realize they're not just working online all the time. It's just, the parents just need to see that, and then they're fine.
Now, is there an age where you would feel certain technologies would be developmentally inappropriate for children? Like, a child at this age should definitely not be using this type of tool.
I think it depends how they're used. I have seen some pre-K classes online that do something that they call Skype Play. And so what they do is they just have they set up the computer and Skype, and it's just pointed at the kids who are playing in the classroom. And so the kids will run up to the computer and they'll have a look at what the other kids are doing. If somebody else is there, they might talk, they might not, then they might run away and go back to playing. So they're playing with those kids, but in a different way. So they're getting a different kind of social interaction. And I think that's very valuable for them to see other kids are playing, and wow, look at what they're building. They're building a boat. Maybe we should build a boat, so that they get sense of what's happening outside their classroom and some ideas from other kids. I think that's very developmentally appropriate to have those kids in pre-K sitting down, typing on an iPad, or blogging. Do I think that's appropriate? No. So I think it depends on the age. What are you learning? What are you working on? My pre-K in my school are working on social interaction. It's a way to provide social interaction.
Okay. So, and I think part of your message is consistent, right? It's really, and I've been saying this in class as well, but it's really good to have another educator reiterate what I said. They're going to listen to you more than they listen to me. It's not about the technology. It's more about what you do with it and why you're using it. And starting with a problem, you start with a pedagogical problem. I want to try and do this, and then if the technology is appropriate for that problem, then you use it. If it's not, you don't use it. So.
Yeah, if you're looking to integrate technology, you're doomed to fail. It's not about, let's find a way to integrate this in. It's about how can technology solve a problem that I have. If technology is not the best way, then don't use the technology. I want my kids to have counters when they're learning math. I don't want them just to work with virtual stuff.
So have you experienced any other of your colleagues who are like absolutely against the use of technology in early childhood classrooms? And if so, what do you say to other educators who are like, no, you shouldn't be using technology?
There's not a lot you can say except that what you're doing, really. I have teachers at my school who have been in the past fairly anti-technology, and they, it's a journey for everybody. It's a journey that they're on. You can only show them what you're doing and talk about the excitement of the kids when they connect with a class far away on Skype, or the excitement when they got a comment from that author on our blog or whatever. You can only share with them what you're doing. You can't make somebody do it. People are trying, and I don't think that's really working. I think just show them what the possibilities are and support them in getting to where they want to be.
Yeah, that's a nice approach. It's like the Tao of technology, where it's like water. You just be like the nature of water, and change happens gradually over time. So, I mean, you're obviously tremendously positive about the use of technology in your teaching, and you have a wealth of experiences. Can you talk to like some of the biggest challenges that you've experienced and how you overcame them?
Well, access has been an issue sometimes. Bandwidth is a huge issue. It's ongoing, right? And now that I have, we have quite good bandwidth in my classroom. The technology guys we have are fabulous, and they've worked hard on it, and they're really good in that they want the teachers to get what they need. They're not controlling what's happening. But nonetheless, if you have 20 kids who are trying to upload to YouTube at the same time, it doesn't go well. So internet bandwidth is an issue. Those are the biggest issues that I've had. Having access to the tools that you want, and you overcome that just by using whatever you have, I would say, and that's what I've always had to do now. I'm very blessed to have all those iPads, but they won't last forever either. And then, there's no more Best Buy contests, so I'm going to have to go back to our weekly trip to the computer lab probably. So, dueling with what you have, and we take turns uploading to YouTube now, so that we don't have those failed uploads all the time. And you have to find a way to make it work.
So you've definitely, obviously, there's technological challenges. Have you had any pedagogical challenges in implementing technology?
I wouldn't say so, because I don't use it in ways that I think aren't pedagogically sound. Before I'm going to teach a lesson, I think, what's the best way? If the best way involves technology, then I use it. If the best way is not technology, then I don't use it.
How do you? This is another specific question, but so you do use technology a lot. You're very thoughtful about how you use it. Do you have a system in place for monitoring children? the student used the word monitoring. I think it's really interesting. But monitoring children when they're using technology to make sure that it's educationally appropriate.
Well, I put the apps on the iPad, so yes. You know, depending on what your setup is, like when I had the computers, they were all facing the classroom, so always knew what sites the kids were on, and I could, if they were on something they shouldn't be, then I could go over and talk to them about it. You know, I put rules in my classroom, so just once the kids are better writers and they're tweeting independently, the rule is no tweet goes online until I see it first, and there are consequences if you don't. So you just have to think through what your expectations are, model those expectations, and then there's a consequence if you step outside the line and it's something you don't like, because they all want access to that technology.
Now that tweet rule, did that come out of an experience where a student tweeted something they shouldn't have, or was it something you had always thought of beforehand?
I already had that I put that in place before, yeah, because I've taught long enough that you just know these things, right? You have to make these rules. And so, yeah. And there was I had somebody who did something that they shouldn't have, and there was a consequence. Nobody else ever did it again.
Yeah. I'm looking at the time, and it's about 10 to 10, so I know that you probably
I
have
need
to
to
go.
connect with my inter school.
So if I could ask you one last question,
Okay.
and it's a selfish question. It ties into the. Were you in Texas? I think you were in Texas. We talked in Texas, didn't we not?
I have been in Texas a couple times.
Well, I'm talking about this past July for the conference.
No, last year in July, no, I wasn't in Texas. I don't think. Which conference?
The ADE conference, the Apple conference.
Oh yes.
Yeah, yeah. You don't remember that whole week of
Well,
craziness?
I don't call that a conference, but I guess it was. Yeah, conferences are the ones I speak at, and so.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, the ADE thing.
Yeah,
that
I
we
went.
were at in Texas. So I was asking people for one piece of advice. So if you could give one piece of advice to early childhood educators or a teacher working in a kindergarten classroom, what would that one piece of advice be?
I would say try one thing. That's usually what I say. Try one thing to connect your classroom with another classroom. Try one thing. Try a Skype call. Try setting up a Twitter account, make a Facebook page, something. Try one thing that connects your classroom with the outside world, and just see where that takes you, what can happen with that, and then maybe you'll want to try other things.
Awesome. So can I use that in my iBook? That one
Your
piece.
what?
Well, I'm hoping to put together.
You're still doing your book?
Well, no, not my one best thing. It's a separate project that I'm trying to work on, where I'm getting educators to give one piece of advice to potential educators, so who are working. So I'm hoping to put it into an iBook so that they can read the iBook and watch people's videos and that kind of thing. So I'm
So
asking.
you want just that little section to be in your book.
Yeah, well, that one little tidbit would be for that book, but the rest of this is going to be shared just within we do blend spaces, so it'll be just within the blend space. So,
Okay.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Yes, you can. I heard the bell.
Okay,
So,
well, I really sincerely thank you for taking the time to meet with me. I know my class is going to benefit from this tremendously, so.
happy to do it. Good luck in your studies, students. Don't worry about the marks.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
So once again, we want to thank Kathy for joining us today. You can follow Kathy on Twitter at Kathy Cassidy. You can also follow her class blogs at misscassidy'sclass.edublogs.org. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.